Okay, good evening and welcome to our ACCELN Learning Hangout, Series 4, Episode 13 for 2014. Hi Wes, my special co-host today. You're meant to wave back, never mind. So this is a place where we can connect with people all around the world in our PLN in very different time zones. And as usual, if you're watching us live, you can post us a question to our panel by going to todaysmeet.com/ACCELN. And on Twitter, you can use the hashtag ACCELN as well. I'm Amanda Rablin, e-learning coordinator in Brisbane, proud QSite member and recovering from a first day back to school blues, but not nearly as bad as Roland, who has had extreme technical issues. That's why we're delayed our broadcast. So how about we introduce our panel for this evening, and we'll start left to right, which means alphabetically by first name. So we'll start with Dan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, it's Dan Ingvarson here. Some of you would know me from other lives and other places. Currently working in at NSIP, the National Schools Interoperability Program, and pleased to be on the panel.
Lovely to have you with us. And Jill, perhaps you can start by letting us know what time it is in your time zone.
Well, I would say good morning from my time zone. It's almost 4 o'clock in the morning for me. Did I do my math right? Yes. So welcome and thank you so much. I'm the CEO of Continuum Education, and I'm very excited to hear about some of the challenges and some of the things that you all are thinking about in terms of personalized learning and 21st century skills and collaboration.
Fabulous. Wonderful to have you with us. And I'm sure you've got a caffeine supply just on hand in case.
That's right.
And Joel, who I met recently at the QSite conference. Welcome.
Hi. Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Joel Cowie. I'm with the Science, Mathematicians and ICT Professionals in School program at the CSIRO, and I manage the ICT partnerships and projects. So this is my first joining of the network, and I'm quite looking forward to it. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're most welcome. I think we'll have to have you back for your own show to talk about your work too.
I'm looking forward to it.
Hooray! And Nick, thanks for joining us.
Hello there, my name's Nick Jackson. I'm here in Adelaide, but as you can tell from my rather strange accent, I'm not from Adelaide. However, I am one of those strange people that comes across on an aeroplane and deposits themselves because it's a sunnier country, but it's not really sunny at the moment because it's bloody freezing. But anyway, you get the idea most of the time, and I sort of do some of that education stuff. Hello.
Hello. Always lovely to have you join us. And Terry, also early morning for you, I believe.
Yes, ma'am. I'm in Louisiana. I live in California, out near where Jill is now. I'm just visiting family this week. And it's about 6 a.m. local time here. And yes, I do have caffeine. Actually, I can two-fist. I have it in both directions, just right off either side of the screen. And I work for Continuum Education. I'm the Chief Product Officer. And like Jill, I'm fascinated by the idea of trying to inject collaborative activities into all types of learning, personalized learning, for example. I'm also here to show you around the application we're in the process of building.
Fabulous. I'm really excited to have you all on board this morning, whatever time it is, time zone it is that you're in. And it looks like the one person I nominated as co-host for this evening has now possibly dropped out a little bit. But Wes, if you're there, can you give us a wave or an intro?
Yes, it's Wes from head of ICT at Genesis College in Brisbane, and looking forward to guests.
Okay, he probably sounded like a Dalek for everyone else as well.
Yeah.
But essentially head of e-learning at Genesis College in Brisbane, and really excited to be here today. I'm sure that's what he said. Yes. Now, I might actually, because we're exploring peer-based learning and we've got a bit of show and tell that I'm really looking forward to today, but we've also had things like differentiation, personalization mentioned. So I thought, being as you made such a special effort to wake up so very early, maybe we could start with Jill. Would you like to give us a bit of an overview about the types of exciting things you're working on?
Sure. So one of the things that we really wanted to focus on is really how is it that we can better enable teachers in the classroom to really focus on personalized learning and communication and collaboration. And so in doing that, what we did was really scan the marketplace in terms of what those tools and resources were, and noticed that there were some gaps. So everything that we're focusing on is really on what is it that can enable that, and then also not creating another platform. There's lots of really great platforms that are out there, but what is it that we could do either as something that was standalone or that could actually be incorporated into and integrated into those platforms to take them to that next specific level of innovation. So within that scan of the marketplace, we also then scanned a lot of the research such that we were basing what we were doing on what some of the research was starting to say around the use of ICT within the classrooms and where there were some of those gaps as well.
So I have a question for you, Jill.
Sure.
I know that you were involved in a range of assessment and reporting kind of platforms and looking at the needs at that kind of information level. It's quite a step towards sort of personalized learning. What were in the research? What were some of the things that you were most surprised to learn?
Oh wow, that's a big question, Dan. I think some of the things that we found. So I have worked a lot in the United States with the assessment consortia, which are two very large programs that are focused on statewide collaboration around the use of technology and innovative technology items within assessments. And so what a lot of the research was saying is that we're still not quite there in terms of technically enabling what we're trying to get at in terms of assessment. And so it's not that traditional knowledge assessment that we're trying to find and just, can I answer the multiple choice question, but how can I really get into some of those deeper things and really understanding and knowing what a student knows and not necessarily where those deficits are, such that you can scaffold and build then on top of what those specific pieces are. Does that make sense, Dan?
Yeah, and I think you also, I should say that Jill's had a long history in looking at what works in classrooms, coming from a classroom teacher, and now it will be. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the other things you've got to show us today.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Wes, you said you're back.
I think I am. Hearing
yes.
Good, excellent.
You're a little bit clearer.
So
It might be, as much as we love your beautiful face, it might be worth lowering your bandwidth options just so we could have clearer audio from you, if that's possible. Thank you. So Jill, I wonder, were there other aspects besides the assessment gaps that you found in terms of the products that were missing, the types of tools that were available to teachers?
Yeah, so the first thing that we really focused on was on the collaboration piece, and knowing that there's so much research that's out there right now in terms of how valuable collaboration is, for learners to work together, knowing that it's really showing how to increase some of the social competency as well as the wonderful, wonderful effects that we're having on student learning. We really wanted to look at that as kind of that first challenge, as what is it that we could do to better enable that while also giving learners choice, and that's where some of that personalization starts to come in, is that learners often are on somewhat of a dedicated track in terms of what it is that they're supposed to do. And so within that, and then the third piece of that really is that when you start talking about personalized learning and looking at some of those real powerful 21st century skills, it's often done in a very individual way. So every learner has their different ways that they're going about. Every learner has strengths that they can bring to the table. And so what is it that we could actually do to bring a collaborative aspect to that personalized learning within that social classroom? So one of the first tool that we've actually created, it's called Apropos, which is a collaborative search activity tool that, again, what I mentioned earlier, can stand alone as a specific application, or it can be embedded into whatever type of platform it is that you're actually using and wanting to see. And what I think I'm going to do at this point, if this makes sense at this part of the conversation, is to turn it over to Terry so that he can show some of the things that we're putting together. We also believe in a very agile approach to how we're doing this, as well as the user-centered design and some of those technical product development terms, such that what we're doing makes sense in terms of what we're actually building and trying to accomplish with our specific goals and our research agenda. So Terry?
Sure, thank you, Jill. And I should just add that what Jill mentioned about the over-individualized nature of personalized education is something we also see as an assessment issue. We're not sure what causes the other, but we know that obviously it's a lot easier to measure an individual at work rather than an individual at work in the context of a group activity. And I think that in some degree inhibits some of the types of technologies and types of teaching and learning that are out there for students. And so Apropos is an attempt to, among others we'll probably do, to try to push back against individual instruction rather than instruction that tries to learn about an individual. And the latter is what we're really trying to value, be it in a group context or in an individual learning context. We're trying to learn about that individual, not just isolate them and point them in a machine indefinitely. Anyway, I'm going to turn my camera off to increase. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to shut that camera off.
Whoa.
So that I may share my screen.
That's quite a profile picture you've got there. It sort of makes you look a bit superhuman.
Yeah, and
he must be.
Wow, you're awesome.
Yeah,
I've never seen a clip that way, and what you don't know is there's a tiny little flower holding right below my chin, and I'm just holding it, and you don't even see the flower, you just see the stubble, basically.
That makes the picture even more awesome. You must be a superhero, though, to combine that personalized learning and collaborative together, because I think some people kind of view it really much as a dichotomy. You know, it's either really personalized or collaborative. So I'm really intrigued to see what you're creating, and I'm going to change the camera so it's all on your screen for the demo.
Alrighty then, and I should just share an aside. Jill and I were having a conversation with someone at a conference recently, someone who is a CEO for a company who shall remain nameless, and it's an entirely different vertical. It's not even about education at all, but it is a learning application, a language learning application that's outside of formal education. And he was talking about how it was so easy for him to conceive how to build personalized learning environments, really nice features of customization, and at the same time, though, his students kept pushing for some sort of social or group learning activity. After all, this was language. You're supposed to communicate with other people. And he found that essentially a tool like Google Hangouts, which we're using right now, was among the most popular tools that application had in its suite of options for students to choose. But then at the same time, he was learning very little from it. That he could learn a lot from pointing an individual at his very well scaffolded and very well constructed environment of learning. But again, the students wanted to break out of that, and they wanted to go talk to one another. And once they were there, the best he could do was basically apply tutors or moderators to that environment and hope for the best. But he kept complaining about how he lacked intelligence from those interactions. It is in that spirit that we try to work with Apropos. What you'll find is we're just trying to support an activity. We don't pretend that a group collaborative search is going to answer all of the problems of education. It can aggregate how a group of students are thinking about an issue. It can disaggregate how they think about it. But we just want a simple, repeatable cognitive exercise that is truly inquiry, literally an inquiry activity, not inquiry-based, that allows us to learn about an individual. So, in that spirit, I'm going to actually point you to, and can you all see my screen right now? You probably see a picture, a yellow, a black silhouette, a miner with a pickaxe.
Yeah.
We sure can, and I'm focusing the broadcast on your screen, so the viewers should be able to follow along with it too.
Thank you. And what you're looking at right now is one of two interfaces we've built into Apropos. There's an educator interface and a learner interface. You're looking at the educator's interface right now. And essentially what Apropos is going to do is it's going to allow an educator to identify a search prompt and to, in a time-boxed way, let students search in relation to that prompt on any web-enabled device. When the timer ends, it doesn't necessarily end the activity. It allows the discussion phase of an activity to continue. There are ratings, there are comments available, and as you'll see in a moment, we have a screen that dynamically arranges the web pages that students find and bring back to the session. At this first stage, this very early alpha stage of Apropos, teachers are the ones that actually have the accounts, and it's the students who are actually logging into a session. It almost works kind of like a video conferencing tool. It's just for a very specific purpose of a search. In the beginning, in this alpha release, we're pointing at synchronous real-time learning activities because it's harder to do technically, and it's led us to a lot of interesting things in terms of product design, which I hope you'll sense as we move forward. But what we're really trying to do is open it up into longer-term asynchronous activities. The only things we know are always going to be true about Apropos is it's always going to involve inquiry, and it's always going to involve a group. And generally, the person who issues the activity, who primary searcher, others need to search. Because what we're trying to think of, too, is that educator, that manager of the activity, needs to keep the cognitive load light. That we need the students, the learners, to be working with the assets, to be working with the content, and we want the educator to be looking at the activity and making sure that that activity reaches its successful outcomes. Anyway, what you're looking at right now is our primary means of... Oh, go ahead. Just a question.
Sorry, Terry, I thought there was a pause in breath there. I was just going to say, for some language things, I think by cognitively light, what you mean is easy for a teacher to be able to see how it fits with their work and what they try to achieve with the students, and not complex for them to implement. Is that right?
Absolutely, and particularly the last thing you just said, Dan, that this is meant to be done in real time in a teaching and learning situation. And I was a classroom teacher myself, and we all know that there's a lot going on, and we don't want to overcomplicate the tasks that the teacher has to do. And that not only comes down to building a nice, clean interface for the teacher to work with, but to actually refine the role of that educator in this activity. That this is a group activity, and we therefore have to give the individual choice within that group activity. If the individual learner is going to be able to have choice, it's largely going to be about the content that they bring to the activity. So we try to put the educator into the role of creating the boundaries for the activity, the topics, the outcomes for the search and for the discussion. But we want those students doing a lot of the thinking in terms of finding something that may be useful and evaluating one another's work. We try to place the educator in more of a role of facilitating that activity and just making sure it gets where it needs to go.
All right, thanks. Let's have a look.
I'll take. Sure. Let's open up an activity here, and what we actually did was create a notebook that has, and again, please forgive the low.
Terry, I think we may have lost you on the audio.
It is cutting in and out a little. You might be able to adjust your bandwidth settings for your Hangout session. Otherwise, is there a way for someone else to drive the screen while you talk?
Just while we're trying to get Terry back
Sure.
on there, just a question there. Is collaboration sort of, are you finding being demanded by students to include people outside of the classroom and even, you know, looking at collaboration outside of the country or even the state?
Wes, that's a really good question, and the answer to that is yes. And it's not just the students, but it's also the teachers. You know, there are many different, or several frameworks, I should say, around the 21st century skills, and they all have one of those common themes of the global aspect of it, and learning about different cultures and those types of things. And so teachers as well as students are looking at ways to collaborate outside of their own specific classroom. And in reality, students are already doing that anyway with their wonderful use that they do outside of the classroom with ICT as well.
Excellent, yeah. That's what I sort of was thinking.
Yeah. And are you finding that as well, Wes, down in Australia?
Yeah, we're certainly trying that, obviously with countries like in Japan where there's only an hour's difference in time zone, it's a really good opportunity to communicate between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, the time difference is always the challenging thing in a synchronous way.
Just wondering whether you might have something, Jill, to just to give us an overview.
Yep.
So a background maybe that you could bring up while Wes is bringing ourselves back in, I think.
Absolutely. So let me just share a little something that I put together from an overview perspective so you can get an understanding specifically what Apropos is trying to accomplish and really look at. So I mentioned a few of the things that we were focused on, and now what we're really looking at from a research agenda things is getting a little more specific and some questions that we're asking. So with Apropos, the specific problem that we're focusing in terms of educators is really that absence of those technology applications to support the collaborative personalized learning, as well as needing to scaffold internet-based activities. So there's been some research done that collaboration is already occurring on the internet, but it's in kind of a haphazard sort of a way, and so it's either done through social networking or email and those types of things. And so we wanted to bring a way that could bring it all together, and then you could, as a teacher or an educator, actually scaffold what those specific pieces are. And then from a learner perspective, we talked about that choice piece. They don't often have a control over what it is that they want to do and where their specific interests are driven, and you can guide that within the classroom. And then also knowing that learners as well as educators have those various levels of technology use, and so because of that, it shouldn't inhibit them from doing what they can do and demonstrate what it is that they're understanding and have that dialogue and conversation with each other. And then also there's that absence in many cases of those critical thinking skills. And so what was it that we could do to combine all of those specific things? So really we wanted to turn the internet into that collaborative learning space. So from a high level, these are the 5 main processes, and it's just from an operational perspective in terms of what it is that the specific educator, learner, and then collaboratively they're actually doing together. So if you look at, and we break this down specifically just from a workflow perspective and what it looks like, the educators are generating a prompt or some sort of an activity, and once we get Terry back up, we'll show you that, or if he doesn't, then I'll jump in and show you the specific thing as well. Align it to learning standards, and that really is just a simple framework. It can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be learning standards. You wouldn't have to align it to those specific things. It's just a way that you can frame some things. Then you would start the activity, and you would send the learners the passcode. So it's really simple, again, going back to that light cognitive load that Terry talked about. And then from a learner perspective, they go to that specific URL. They enter in their name and their passcode. They can work with others individually or by themselves to actually look at what that specific prompt is or that activity is. And then they just type in a search. And so it's whatever search engine you want to use. Right now we have it connected up with Google, but you can plug in the different search engines, or if it's within inside of your own specific repository of content that you want them to be searching for, you can have that piece as well. Then they post what it is that they're wanting to, and they rank they can rank then others and comment within that specific learning space as well. And I think it's really important to mention here that while this is just the operational side of things, all of the things cognitively that the learners are actually having to accomplish in order to respond to that specific prompt and activity, and what they have to do is they search and choose. And so it is a much greater thing than just simply going in and typing one thing or another. And we have things built in as well, so you can check for inappropriate nature of things and those types of things. And then as an educator,
can you hear me?
well, I can now, Terry, yes.
Okay, you're just going so well there too. I didn't want to stop you, but at the same time, I thought I might try to do a little bit of the demonstration
Sure.
that we have lined up.
Yep,
Sure.
jump right in.
Alrighty. What we did is we've opened up an activity with a book. A lot of people have obviously read in schools in Australia. We wanted to try to do something that indicated the type of activity in which an apropos search activity might nest. Because again, the discovery and the discussion activity could take just a few minutes. It could take an entire class period, depending on how you wanted to do it. But more importantly, it's important for educators to look at this activity and think about what would come before and what would come after it, how you would do multiple activities over a series of days or weeks. And what this example does is it allows you to sort of understand how a group reading the same book might be able to then discuss it. And the precise activity I'm doing here is people recalling having read this book, and forgive the pronunciation, my Jiragunji, I think might be the way it's pronounced. But how people recalling that, how badly did I mangle it?
No, I'm not sure. I can't answer that with authority. It's just your screen isn't being shared, and we'd love to see the things that you're seeing right now.
All right, then. So probably I shut down too much in terms of low bandwidth. All right, then. I'll go back to my Hangout, and in doing low bandwidth, I may have actually just set myself back to the Stone Age. So let me see what I've done here. And
what I'm imagining is super awesome, but I'm
desktop.
sure the real thing is even better.
It is, Amanda.
So I like. Well,
actually, we could just. Well, the backup from here is to have Dan do hand shadow. Actually.
Oh, we got a flash of your screen there, and then it went away.
Oh, that's a shame. Alrighty then. I know as a backup to this, I can always.
We have it.
Okay. Oh. And now we're looking at the Hangout. Alrighty
that's
then.
scary.
Okay, I see the Hangout, and I see that the video's back.
Terry, what if I pull it up while you talk?
That can work too.
You sure could if you want. Sure. And actually, Jill, if you could choose to go to.
Okay.
We could flick between. We could see how you go with setting this up in the educator one, and if that doesn't work, we'll get Jill to load the student one.
Looks like you're working, Terry.
I'm on.
So I mean, Amanda.
We can see it.
Okay. Let's take a crack at this, Jill. And if this doesn't work out, I'll go off audio and I'll just steer around and I'll let you talk over it since I'm already open.
That works.
Alrighty then. What we're doing here is we're doing a search activity in relation to a book we've all just read, as I just introduced. What I'm going to do is show how this larger screen here, the teacher's interface, allows you to see a URL that had been sent in by a student from before in relation to the search prompt. A couple of administrative things I'll show you first before I dive into the student side. You can see the participants who have logged in. My alter ego, Freddie, logged in last night and submitted this URL, and you can see how his name is bold, and if you select his
and
I think we've lost audio.
Yeah.
Keep on, Jill.
So when you would actually select his name, you would then see what the specific URL
What to do
is.
in the future.
That's right.
What we'd also like to do in the future is make different.
So I think we've lost Terry again. So let me jump over to. Let me. I think he just realized we lost him again. So let's see if I can get it to actually come up.
We'll call this tag teaming and problem solving action.
That's exactly right. So can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me jump in here real quick. So the specific prompt that he was demonstrating and showing was this one here on the specific book. And you can see here is some of the things where you can set up the session, which he was talking about, and actually create that prompt. This is where you would invite the specific students to that session, the discussion, what the actual prompt is. There's different activities, so it's not just a simple, here it is. You can actually show some of the things in terms of here's a best site. You can have something around a group presentation. You can do a collection of things. You don't have to have any activity. It could just be a specific one that you would want. How long you want the search to go for. So oh, sure, go right ahead.
So with those things, the prompt is what the students are supposed to work to.
That's right.
And the activity is the kind of the way that they work towards that. So you've got a structure that says, here's your objective, now I want you to do it as a group discussion, or find me the best site, or et cetera, et cetera. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
And you could frame those differently as well, depending on what your specific instructional strategies are. So, for example, on the best site, well, it could be find your best site, and then together as a class, you could set the rankings, which I'll show you in a minute, and then that will demonstrate here is the best site that the class has determined. So you can do it in a couple of different ways.
Right. So all the teachers had to do is literally type in a prompt, type in a thing, give it a URL, and then press go.
That's exactly right. So what you would do is you would just create a new session. Here's the title of the session. Let's see, it sounds like you all were just on holiday. So this one's not really academically related, but just for the sake of example, first, what did you, we'll do this. And then the prompt.
Find a site that, yeah, okay.
Yep, and we're just going to say, let's do best site, and then we could align it to a standard if we wanted to, which we talked about, and if not, then we save it. And then what we would do, you can then go back in here and edit. So with the student search time, because this is collaborative, it is synchronous. You can set what that specific time is. You can align it to a specific subject area. The standard that we talked about. A notebook is a way of organizing different sessions. So you may have seen under literature, that was the specific prompt that Terry was working on. So it shows you all of the sessions that you have under literature, and we've got a couple of other ones that have been started as well in terms of economics and business skills and numbers and algebra, and then you can also create a new notebook to put this one in. You can share it with a class if you've got that class set up, and then what you would do is invite the students to participate. So we already have one started, as Terry was showing, and that's just to let you know that, oh, we haven't closed out the other one, but we're going to override Terry's session and go ahead and get started and invite the students to the specific session. So here's where we said, here's the URL, and then that's the little passcode that you would actually provide to the students along with the URL, and then you would start the session. And so that's how simple it is to actually begin the session. You can see how much time is remaining, when you specifically started it. You can look at what the prompt is. Since we started discussing the book, which we all read when we were younger, let's consider some themes between the two worlds that the boy lives between. How are some of those cultural representations drawn from the different contexts? And so you can see here's a couple that have already been posted. which is the, here's one on how to deal with bullies that Terrence submitted. Here's one on DNA confirming that the Aboriginal culture is one of the Earth's oldest that Freddie has posted, as well as a specific comment that Terrence and Freddie both posted with those specific things. You can see the participants, and this was the piece that Terry was showing. When I click on Freddie, you can see it highlights the specific one that Freddie has actually provided. So you can follow along as the learners in real time are actually putting forward what those specific pieces are. You can also always go back to what that session info is, how long the session is, how much time is remaining. I can change how many submissions per student. I can look again at the login information. So let me pull that up so you can actually see what it looks like from a learner's perspective.
Why don't you chuck it into a chat window and we could all have a go? We could pretend to be a student.
Sure, we can do that as well.
I mean that's on the fly kind of stuff. You know, we can.
It is on the fly kind of stuff.
It's all been on the fly tonight.
Yeah, it's definitely all been on the fly tonight. So
it has been, but that is quite all right.
So all right, well let's see if we're smart enough to act like your students.
Oops. Oh, I'm sure you all are smart enough to act like the students. So everybody else can see, let me get the passcode here real quick.
It's in the chat window.
Yep.
Okay, I can see a screen with the picture from the book, the prompt, time, and a search bar up the top, and a little hamburger which, when I click on it, does search my posts, log out. Okay.
That's right. And
I've never heard that called a hamburger before.
Oh, you haven't? Dan, I'm having some technical difficulties on my end, so would you mind sharing your screen so that everybody could see what the student interface looks like?
They'll probably be seeing it themselves. Oh no, yes, we've got to do it for the. We're not doing it for us, are we? We're doing.
No, we're not.
Okay, which one is mine?
This is Terry. I think I might be able to share my screen again.
Okay.
That's probably better than me trying to find.
What I'll actually do.
Wes, it looks like you're in as well, so if you want to.
Yep. So then I just noticed the time went up again. So then I'm able to search for something. So if I just search for the book name, what's this? Guarantee.
Terry, are you sharing your screen? There we go.
To, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, come on now.
We can see it.
Okay, and I think you're looking at just mine right now. And you're looking at just one window. This is from the student side, and I've actually narrowed my browser window to approximate a smartphone experience because we built first for smartphones. I could unpack this and we could make it larger for larger screens such as tablets or laptops. But as we start, we're optimized for student phones. And what you see here are the same 3 websites that were sent in earlier. And the first thing I could do is to rate this comment. And once we go back to the educator side, you'll be able to see those ratings show up. I can also make a comment here. And as I load one up, I'm able to comment from this side, and I'll also be able to go back to those pages. You can see the ratings show up here. Now, I'm not going to be able to rate my own post. For example, I'm logged in as Terrence right now, and this is one of the sites I put in. I'm not going to be able to rate my own, but I can comment on my own. And as a means of advocating how brilliant I am,
Just like the students, right?
I'll just make sure that everyone rates it very knows. Note that this, and this is something I'll be able to change in just a moment. Do you see how the hamburger icon is covered? If you see how that hamburger icon has turned red and a border has appeared around it, it's letting the student know that the search timer has ended. It doesn't necessarily end the activity, but it does temporarily freeze the ability to send new information to the teacher's page. You can keep browsing, you can keep searching, but your ability to send a URL back to the page stops until the educator reopens that timer, which I believe is now in Jill's hands.
Yes, and let me extend that time real quick.
All right,
I think
give the people what they want, Jill.
That's right.
We're running short of time ourselves, so.
Very well. And so what we wanted to do is take you around a little bit more. We've been through the search utility. Something I'll show you again is the opportunity to, and I'm just going to enter any website here. The menu comes here at the bottom of the cell phone. It's the opportunity to go see the prompt, see the timer, to see all the pages you have saved before. For example, this would take you back to the beginning, as would this hamburger icon as well. This is where a lot of the discussion happens. You can see the number of comments. And one of the things we're trying to do, and I'll close here, is you'll see it from the teacher, is we want to encourage certain types of participation. We need students to be able to rate one another's work. We want to see it as a choice that students make, the degree to which they rate one another's sites. We want to see a lot of commentary, and we are trying to rely on the student instinct to try to see them affect change on the teacher's screen. And one of the things we expect to be able to do is to dynamically arrange the ranking of websites in an apropos activity based on one of two ways: the ratings that students apply to it, and perhaps more fundamentally importantly, the amount of activity on a particular website, the number of comments, the number of ratings. We feel that these things are important, and we want to make sure that educators know that if a particular website is getting a lot of commentary from students, we want to float that thing up to the top of the screen so that the educator can dive in. It's like I said earlier, that the educator has a lot going on, and they can't just observe every single interaction going on necessarily. So when student activity becomes intense around a specific issue, just as it would be in a physical classroom, where it would be much easier to see, we want to see that buzz emerge and to make a website much more interesting and compelling to the teacher to dive in. And from there, the discussions can ensue. Just as the student has the opportunity to select a link and go back to the original source page in a different window or in a different tab, the educator has the same opportunity too. Are there any questions, any places where you would like us to go with this activity, or should we start to close?
Well, I might do a poor man's kind of how I see this kind of fitting together. Simply, so you can put up a simple question. You can scaffold what the kids search for. The kids can comment on things. They can see whether that's relevant. They can then comment and rate back on whether what they're doing is on task or off task. The teacher can see what each one of the kids have been doing and submitting, how much activity each player has been contributing to the discussion, and at the end, you end up with a ranking system so that there's a sort of a goal, an objective of the collaboration to get what it was that you guys, thought was good or best or met the activity up the rankings. So it's almost, it's got a slight, not quite gamification, but there's a sort of incentive.
That's right, Dan. That's exactly right. And we did receive the question of, in terms of what search engine is being used. In this one, it is Google, but you can use it within any specific search engine. Or, excuse me, if you are embedding it into one of your specific platforms, it can be embedded into that platform and can search that repository that may be, let's say, within inside of your LMS.
So what kind of feedback have you had from teachers so far? And have you had any kind of beginner teachers who aren't really necessarily into technology or struggle with that collaboration kind of aspect?
That's right. Terry, do you want to talk about that one since you've worked most closely with the teachers?
Sure, I am going to talk about that one, and I thought at the same time I might stop my screen share just to make sure I'm not interrupted while I'm talking on the audio side. Yeah, we've tested, actually now I think it's 18 different educators in direct usability tests is what we've actually gone to now. 4 of them have been pre-service teachers, and the rest have been teachers of varying levels of experience, and a couple of special education teachers in the mix too. And what we're seeing right now is early thoughts to give the students more control were the primary feedback we got from usability tests. And that made us, if you look at very early designs of Apropos, we actually had teachers more directly involved, not necessarily in searching, but perhaps in regulating or rating or commenting on the sites. And we realized that that was just asking teachers to do too much in the classroom at that time. Since we made that design change and we added a much more substantive student interface, the feedback has now largely gone to discussion outcomes. What we have right now are different types of activity templates that we expect to grow over time, but we know that when the session is over, what you essentially have as a group is a series of URLs that might be repurposed in a variety of ways. You could potentially use this as a group sourcing activity at the start of a writing activity. The feedback also led us to try to take these results and publish them in a Google document relatively easily. And a lot of the feedback about the teacher interface has been particularly that they like the dynamism of the websites as they come in. And a couple of comments also led us to a really interesting enhancement we're going to be doing later this year. Suppose you did a prompt and you asked a group of students to search. If they're all using the same search engine, it's possible that several of these students are going to come back with the same website in an activity, which we had anticipated. But we also realized that students may come back with closely thematically related answers. They may not be the same website, but they are essentially the same answer to the search prompt. So what we intend to do is use a natural language processing API, semantic analysis API, to enable on the fly those websites to be grouped together and stacked and potentially treated as one, so that the comments and posts about it can become aggregated and used as a group. The reason I bring up that potential enhancement is to generalize the most important type of feedback we've gotten. Make things simple in the moment. There's a lot of education to be done before and after an apropos activity, but during this moment, it has to be extremely simple. And this also leads back into collaborative activity and collaborative assessment. What I mean is the educator needs to have very little to do to watch the activity happen. The students, if they become frequent users of apropos, are going to see a very frequent interaction model emerge to them. They get a prompt, they search, they talk about it, they choose their favorites, and then they stamp the results, and then they use them later. That narrow interaction model is going to help us with measurement. We know that the content will swap in and out, the topics, the year levels, all of these things will change. But if that activity is relatively consistent from time to time, we know that we're going to learn a lot about learner styles, how they behave in the context of a group environment. And so it does feed our measurement goal, but it also feeds our goals for usability. Keep things quiet in the moment for educators, and then give them a lot of muscle to publish this in different ways thereafter. That's been the general feedback.
And Amanda, that's a really good question. I know we have to wrap up real quick, and I just wanted to show real quickly one thing that we also, if you are interested in learning more and providing into that, we are going to be doing some pilots coming up starting in the next several weeks with some professional development, and then actually having it used with the learners and some pre and post studies. So if you are interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to have you be a part of that specific pilot and would welcome that opportunity.
That sounds really awesome. I've been absolutely thrilled with the things that you've shared this evening / this morning, despite all the technical issues, not with your product, of course. What I thought we might do is just have a quick wrap up before we say farewell to our viewers, and maybe if we, again, alphabetical order by first name, because it's the easiest way to do it for me, if we start with a reflection and then maybe a challenge or a question, perhaps something for our lovely continuum education people to ponder in terms of the development of their product further. So Dan, we'll start with you.
Okay. A reflection is that there is a lot going on when you're showing us the pictures, and we understand there's lots of parts of the product. Being able to sort of almost Apple style zoom through the key bits that would have, for me, allowed me earlier to understand what the product was best doing, and what what I get to at the end is you're packaging up stuff that you might be able to do manually with tool A and B and C and D into that sort of, now you know what you mean when you say peer learning scaffolded. So you could do it manually, as was noted with Edmodo, or you could probably do it manually with post-it notes, But the point is, that's I suppose it was my reflection. That's also my challenge. It's saying yes, it would be. It looks interesting. I'd love to be able to talk about that bit with a class more.
Thanks, Dan. Jill, what are your reflections on this morning? I mean, I've got to stop saying this evening.
That's all right. I'm used to speaking. I work with you all down there quite often, so I flip quite readily. No, and I think that, Dan, that was a really good point. We were a little broken with some of the technical difficulties that we had in terms of providing that big picture and that specific context. And I think one of the things that I reflected on and would really like to hear more about is where some of those challenges are that you all are finding in terms of it really enabling that collaboration and that personalized learning within your specific context that you have down in Australia.
So you, Jill, you're inviting teachers to come and tell you how to improve your product. Is that right?
That's exactly right, and that's that pilot opportunity that I mentioned that we'll be starting with the professional development on the 28th of July.
Okay, well that's quite interesting. All right, thanks.
Awesome. Joel, what are your reflections as an IT professional?
Well, I was actually looking at it from a point of view of creating our partnerships or not facilitating partnerships. I was actually just wondering, does the teacher have the ability to hand over control, for instance, to an ICT professional who might be mentoring a group of students, and they could do something from outside the classroom using this tool?
Absolutely. We expect distributed learning to be a big part of this. And handing over the control too. Subsequent releases will allow students to drive as well.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Nick, what are your reflections?
Yeah, I think it looks as if it's something that I'd have to spend a lot more time with and get my head around it. Maybe it was the fractured where we delivered, or maybe it's just me because I'm still on holidays here, Amanda, here. But, or maybe it's just too cold. I don't know. Yeah, no, my initial reactions were, I can see you trying to go for a clean interface, but I think if you're going to go down the gamification route, I think I'd want to see, I think my learners, especially at a school level, a secondary school level, would want to see something immediate happening on a dashboard sort of interface where they would be seeing other people posting, they'd be able to see activity happening, they'd be able to see maybe people moving up and down ranking as likes happened, you know, that immediate sort of feedback. There seemed very little of that happening. I had to click between numerous windows to sort of find where I was, and yeah, they were all very clean, but because of their clean nature, I sort of got a bit lost as to where I was very quickly. Again, that could be me; it's a bit thick, but you know, I just want, if you're going to gamify, I need as a gaming side of thing, I'd need more than that. I want to see, you know, that I'm getting rewarded for the search that I found and the people that are actually accessing it and liking it. And I just wonder how much of, if I've understood it correctly, if people are rating the thing that I've searched, how much of it would be that I've got lots of friends in the classroom and I'm popular, so I get my thing rated highly, even though nobody's actually bloody read it. So I wonder in that environment would it work? Having just come from working in university, that's a very interesting area, and I wonder if you're looking for feedback in that area, whether it would be worth setting up those pilots with particular learning hubs in universities and other universities around here. I can imagine they'd be very interested in that kind of thing and developing it from that side of thing, and they would probably give you a lot of that feedback and a lot of that those analytical side of things which they'd be looking for and you'd be probably looking for as well. But to me, my first impressions are the idea is good, and I like that you're approaching this challenging aspect that we all need to consider, but it looks raw to me, and it looks raw that's something that would be very raw at anything from secondary school downwards would be just a little step too far for most teachers at this moment and most students, I think. That's just my early impressions. I could be totally wrong.
Great, thanks. We definitely appreciate that feedback, Nick, and we are planning on doing pilots within the university as well.
It sounds like you would be able to provide a really strong critical user interface analysis for them as well, if you were wanting to.
Absolutely.
Terry, what are your reflections? Oh, he was so upset he had to leave.
That's right. He was done with you.
Oh dear, this hangout's been marred by all kinds of technical issues, but thank you for persisting, everyone. Hey Wes, what are your reflections?
I think it's quite a good product, and I think schools we're awash with a lot of data, and I think any tool that helps us with the analytics, like this one seems to be doing, is going to help with that end product. And when you tie that in with the research of how do you getting in that feedback to pass on to the students, I think it's only going to be more power to the students in terms of their learning.
Excellent. Did you have a challenge or an extra idea?
I don't know. I think the challenge is probably getting my bandwidth up to scratch.
It'll be smoother in the recording.
Roll on the NBN.
Absolutely. The NBN is a code for when we're meant to be getting faster broadband nationally. It's an interesting project. One day we'll live the dream.
That's right. That's right.
We'll let the hamsters free.
Exactly. Well, certainly I've really enjoyed the discussion. I was going to say this evening again, our recent discussion, it's been fabulous, and I see so much potential for this product, really filling a gap that I think hasn't really been explored in such a level that what you're aiming for is a product that is really intuitive and providing that kind of feedback to the learner, and keeping track of people working in a group is so ambitious, but I can see the potential for what you've put together, and that even some teachers that would perhaps, I guess, struggle with a lot of technical concepts would be able to provide the seed in this platform and see the pieces coming together. So I really want to keep watching and see where it goes and what's created next. So well done.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, we might wrap up our discussion this evening. I noticed there's a Roland in here, but I don't know if we'll be able to hear him. So Roland, are you able to talk at all? Oh, that's such a shame. It would have been awesome to meet him.
It's the hamsters again.
Well, exactly. They're not going fast enough. He has sent me numerous text messages just to say that his bandwidth has just been completely destroyed due to technical issues with his service provider. He's been talking to them the whole time, and they can't fix it right now, unfortunately. But stay tuned. We're going to have another ACCELN Hangout next week. We're finalising the details in the next couple of days, so check our Wikispaces site or the ACCE Learning Network community on Google Plus for more information. And if you're already part of those communities, we'll send you an invite to the event. And if you'd like to join our panel in the future, please let us know. And remember, you can view all of our past recordings, including this one, at acceln.wikispaces.com. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.